So there's a conversation going on, you guys. Everybody's talking about lowering the interest rates by capping the interest rates. Cap, cap, cap. While I'm sitting here like, yeah, yeah. This idea that lower interest rates are going to save Americans. I'm like, major cap indeed. Pun intended, you guys. Now, before I go ahead and take this, you can call it a deep dive, call it what you will. Before we go ahead and do that, of course, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, either to the Pocket Politics channel or to the Moral Finance channel as well, or subscribe to both. I'm not against you subscribing to both of them. You guys can also follow me on TikTok under the name of Moral Finance as well. Definitely engage in the comments. I want to know what you guys have to say about, yes, the comedy skits at the beginning, but really about the subject matter, because I want to know, what do you think about this? Because you guys, I am not in support of these, capping of the interest rates. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and let's talk about this, right? Okay, so why am I not a fan of the lowering of the interest rates? President Trump says he wants to cap them. Now, if you are someone who watches Fox News, all of the Fox anchors are very excited about this. He's really addressing the affordability issue because he didn't do that much of it last year, with the exception of a few things. I will give him the credit on that. Of course, gas is affordable, groceries are more affordable. So, there are some things that are happening. In yesterday's episode, we did talk about how he wants to prevent Wall Street from being able to purchase single family homes. So, obviously, he's doing some things as it relates to the affordability parts of his agenda, of course. Now, do I think that this policy actually addresses the issue of that? No, you guys, I actually don't. Now, either this administration thinks that we're dumb enough to believe that, or he's too dumb to realize this doesn't going to work. And frankly, you guys, I think it's the former. Frankly, it feels like a ploy. And if you thought this was a good idea, let me tell you why it isn't. Now, before I go on to the cons, let me talk to you guys about the pros. Why does the idea of lowering the interest rates make some sense here? Well, if he caps the interest rates, it's going to mean that the institutions are going to be very picky and choosy about who they lend their money to, right? Which means it's going to limit access to those who are already high risks from having access to debt. You guys know me. I say it religiously on this show, okay? Debt is one of the most accessible products that Americans have. And frankly, we should be thinking about limiting that access so less people would spiral out of control in debt. And in theory, the idea of lowering the interest rates, meaning the institutions are not going to give that much access to higher risk individuals. Yeah, that sounds like it would be a good idea, only that's not what's going to happen. And why is that not going to happen? You guys, I try to do a pro, right? Like the pro. I try to do pros and cons, but really even the so-called pro is a con here. And why is that? Because in theory, lowering the interest rates should prevent higher risk individuals from getting access to debt. I fully support limiting access to those who are higher risk so that way they are less likely to go further into debt. So it seems like, Arshelle, you said that so beautifully, so eloquently. It sounds like it rolls right off the tongue. Why doesn't this work? Well, it doesn't work because the individuals who are higher risk, who no longer have access if this policy were to pass, are simply going to go to other places, alternatives, sometimes even dangerous places in which they can owe money to. The loan sharks, we've all seen the gangster movies, right? They're going to borrow the money from their cousin Pookie who has money, and then they're going to ruin everybody's Easter dinner because now guess what? Everybody got a conflict over money. And you think I'm joking about this, you guys. This happened to me. Now, it wasn't over Easter. It was over Thanksgiving. Now, this was, I want to say, maybe 2-3 years ago this happened, you guys. There was a conflict with my family because somebody lent someone money. We're talking thousands of dollars. And because the person who borrowed didn't pay back what was supposed to be paid back, no one wanted to be in the same room come Thanksgiving dinner. And I came this close, you guys, had it not been for my 16-year-old niece. Okay, this close to eating ramen noodles for Thanksgiving. Knowing full on well my mother baked apple pies. Knowing full on well my sister, who is a chef, made her famous mac and cheese with the cheese that she won't tell anybody she uses. I know it wasn't Asiago. She's got a secret cheese in there. And I came this close not to having Thanksgiving dinner because money creates conflict when you are mismanaging it, when you are, irresponsible with it. If we know, and we see it even happening today, even with this current administration, money is a reason for war. It can create conflict with the family. Okay, so yeah, you're gonna find family members borrowing more money from more other family members, friends possibly. We're gonna see a lot more court episodes of maybe not Judge Judy because that's over with, right? Maybe Judy Justice, right? Maybe the tribunal justice that we see with Judge Domingo. right? We're going to see a lot of these court episodes about how I borrowed money from someone and I owe this person X amount of dollars and didn't pay it back because I couldn't get it from the banks. That's what's about to happen. You're going to see people go other places to borrow money that they can't afford to pay back. It doesn't actually address the real problem here, okay? Just acknowledging the high interest rate, so AKA the cost of a thing, doesn't actually do anything about the individual who is over leveraged, who is overexposed, does nothing for it. And we have history, you guys, modern history. Every single time you lower interest rates, this doesn't change anything about the person's behavior, about American citizens' behavior. If rates are lower, those who do have access after a policy like this were to pass are just going to think to themselves, well, I can afford to take out more debt. It's that kind of attitude why Dave Ramsey doesn't support things like consolidation. It's why I would never recommend to any of my clients to consolidate their debts, because if you haven't addressed your behavior, you're going to assume because you consolidated, because the interest rate was reasonable, because you can afford to make this payment and you freed up some capital, that you can just afford to take out additional debt, being again irresponsible. If you don't address the financial behaviors and the bad financial habits, if you don't actually address the overexposure of the individual who has the debt, then lowering interest rates does nothing. Okay. Now, I support the administration wanting to tackle this. I remember when Senator Hawley said this. This was last year, not even last year. He said this before President Trump took office. So it was after he won the election by a landslide, but before he took the oath of last year in January. Senator Hawley had a whole hearing. Well, him and other senators, of course. They had a hearing with all these credit card companies, right? Visa was there, MasterCard was there, and they were complaining about the interest rates, which I completely agree. These rates are ridiculously high. Are they this high because the math suggests they should be this high? Or are they this high because your asses are just greedy? I think it's the latter. I think they're just greedy. This is not based off of anything objective, not based off of any real algebra that any individual who knows how to solve a quadratic equation can solve for themselves. I don't think this is because the math says it. I think it's because they're greedy. Senator Hawley suggests the same thing, and he was saying he hoped that President Trump would cap the interest rates. Obviously, Trump did not do this or talk about this last year. But we're in the time of midterm, so he's going to do something. And this is one of those things that looks good to the populist movement because it strikes a chord with the institutions. We're going after their money. No, actually, you're not. So even if you thought that was a pro, you guys, it isn't. Why? Because if they can't get their profit from the interest rates, which is what I think these high interest rates are for, because they're greedy, it's only going to pop up in other fees like annual fees, transfer fees, okay, late fees. So I'm going to just throw out some numbers here. What might have been $5 a day in late fees, $100 in annual fees, and possibly $30 in transfer fees, excuse me, maybe not that high. I'll say $15 in transfer fees, are now going to be $30 a day in late fees, $100 for transfer fees, and $500 for annual fees. Because if they can't get their money, their profit, okay, from their interest rates, and now not only are they going to lose that profit from the interest, but now less people have access, they're going to make sure they maintain their profit margins and then some by just overcharging through less transparent means. So all these additional fees that we never see, that's going to pop up there. Now, I'll give that credit. I'll say that's a credit to the Biden administration and all the service charges that we are going to see. We should see what those are. Whether or not that actually happens beyond buying the Broadway ticket, I don't know. But I find that they are still less transparent. You might not know where those additional fees are going to come from, but that's what's going to happen. You thought this would strike a chord at the very debt individuals and assholes, excuse my French, was going to do. You thought this was going to do something. And really, all it does is just, make them want to get their profit elsewhere. They'll get it through the transfer fees, through the annual fees, through the late fees. That's how they're going to get their money. If not through the interest, they're going to get it there. So this actually doesn't do anything to the institution. Okay. It doesn't address the debt that people already have because it's only going to exacerbate the issue, and it doesn't help them get out of debt any faster. Like you thought because the interest rates are lower that you still what? That you didn't have to pay back the thousands and thousands of debt you had? Doesn't get rid of that like at all. And history says, you guys, and I'm talking 21st century, modern history, recent history, that if the rates are lower, people are just going to feel more inclined to take out more debt because they think that the payment is more affordable. Like, yeah, nah. You have to address the real problem here. Overexposure, being over leveraged, being overextended, call it what you will. Now, again, this doesn't mean that I agree that the interest rate should be high. I believe that you need to take an objective way of actually understanding why the rates are going to be what they are, point blank, period. If the math, if the algebra says they should be this high, then they should be this high. If the algebra says that they should be 5 to 10%, then they need to be 5 to 10%. It should not be because, people like Jerome Powell got it in against Trump. It should not be because the government is trying to be the savior. It's simply because the math says they should be this high or be this low. And it's up to the American individual to be responsible with debt. Because again, lowering the interest does not get rid of the debt you already have. But this looks good to the populist movement because, it gets a dig at the institutions. No, it does not. I'm here to tell you it does not. Okay. Oh, well, if there's lower interest rates, then Americans are going to have better affordable opportunities in society. Yeah, it's only going to increase their debt. Those who do have access to debt after a policy like this is passed, they're only going to dig themselves even deeper because that's what the behavior data shows. The data of behavior shows that the more affordable it is, the more likely they are to continue to spend, the more likely they are to dig themselves even deeper into debt. You have not addressed the real problem here, which is, well, if you borrow more than your income suggests, should you be allowed to borrow any more? Well, I think not. I'm all for limiting access to debt because it is the most accessible product. Even minors can get their hands on it via their parents. We've all seen those TikTok videos. Heck, it's why Dave Ramsey even got on what he called at the time Tic Tac to begin with, because he saw a father showing his daughter how to go into debt rather than how to live a life without ever having to engage with the thing beyond the mortgage, the only justifiable debt that exists, in my opinion. Frankly, there is no such thing as good debt. There is justifiable. But if debt were so good, to those of you who are going to say debt is a good thing, because you're going to get in the comments and you're going to say debt's good, debt's good. Yeah, no, it's not. If you're looking at this from an evangelical perspective, if you're looking at this from the scripture, debt is not a good thing. The borrower is slave to the lender. And we all agree, even the left agrees, slavery is bad. Well, if it's bad, then why is debt good if it means you're the slave? Hello. Like, we really trying to change the language of JSON coding language because we don't like the idea of the master versus the slave. Like, that's where we are today in society. If that's how we feel about the terms in coding language, if we all agree that slavery is bad, then why do we think debt is good? Side note, ultimately, if this is how we feel about it, then it should be very limited to those who can actually afford to pay it back. You should not be able to borrow more than you can afford unless you got the collateral to put down. That way, at least they see that you're serious. If you're not going to offer up any kind of collateral, you can't borrow more than you can afford to pay back. Well, how do we determine that? Well, there is this number that is calculated based off of math, an algebraic equation. It's called the debt to income ratio, the DTI. And I don't care about your gross, I care about your net. This actually tells us how much money you have available after all of your financial obligations have been removed from it. So if your behind is in red alert, like over, 50%, you can't afford to take out any more debt. That's what the policy should say. And everybody needs to be held responsible, the institution to the individual, if people are going to find themselves this deep in the hole. Like, this is ridiculous. This doesn't do a damn thing, you guys. Like, at all. Frankly, when it comes to driving, when it comes to drinking, if the person goes to a bar, drinks, gets drunk, gets in their car, drives, and hits a male person or runs into a wall, guess what? The person driving, as well as the bartender and the establishment, all three of them suffer the consequences. Right. Everybody suffers a consequence here, right? Why am I saying this in this regard? Because if the lender is going to lend money to someone, lend a certain amount to an individual whom they know damn well can't afford to pay back the number that they gave them, that institution, that particular bank, that particular lender should suffer a consequence. And the consequence of the individual, well, guess what? You have all this debt and you're going to have to pay it back, even if the lender shouldn't have given it to you to begin with. This is how this works. You want to limit access to debt by actually targeting those who are over leveraged to begin with. If you have more debt than your income, you should not be able to borrow anymore. But that's not the society that we live in. Okay. Lowering interest rates doesn't do anything about the American citizen who is already over leveraged to begin with, Mr. President. This doesn't work. This doesn't work. I get what you're trying to go for. I get why people think this is a good idea, but it's not. And I think anybody who understands how credit and debt work know this is not a good idea because it doesn't do anything about the behavior. The lower the interest, the more likely people are to put themselves further and further into debt. We see this with consolidation, okay? Not only is this going to be a problem in that regard, but those who want to consolidate, those who want to refinance because they do want to get out of debt faster, if they are already higher risk, those opportunities are going to be made even more limited. It's like, So the ones you're saying you're trying to help, the Americans you're saying you're trying to help are actually going to be hurt. And those who do have these opportunities are going to fall into the trap of lower interest rates mean I can take on more debt. It's only going to exacerbate the issue. It doesn't actually solve the problem. Again, I don't believe that President Trump isn't aware of this. And I understand why Senator Hawley thinks this is a good idea. But artificially lowering the rates because you think it's going to help doesn't actually help because it doesn't address the real danger here. It only addresses the cost. It doesn't address the behavior. The real danger here is that the American citizen is over leveraged. And until you address that, then anything you come up with is not going to work. A policy should go after the institution who lended way more than they should have, okay, instead of bailing out the banks because they were stupid enough to over leverage themselves. Okay, they should suffer the consequences and close because they clearly were irresponsible and lent money to individuals who were too high a risk to pay it back. Okay, but they get bailouts, but those who borrowed, they don't. They are stuck paying that debt. But this is what drives bankruptcy and being in default. Lowering the interest rate, guys, doesn't get rid of your student loans that you are now forced to pay back because of the Secretary of Education and this administration. Like, yo, low key, they're like, come on, you guys, they're garnishing your wages and your taxes. I fully support this position, but getting rid of the interest rates, yeah, nah, you guys, you're still sitting on hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. So again, and here's a question: were you able to go out and borrow a car knowing full on well when you got that degree, you were sitting on that much amount of debt? Like, yo, the fact that you were able to use a firm to get burgers off of DoorDash. The fact that you're able to use a firm. Yo, you guys, a girl goes looking at Walmart for affordable cameras to upgrade her production, you guys. I go and do that once. And what do I get in my email? Oh, Arshelle, you should use a firm. Use a firm to get $50 off your $250 purchase at Walmart. So, Loki, let me get this straight. You're telling me that if I spend $250, of course, over the course of a period of time, you're going to waive off $50 over the $200. But then I end up spending $250 to $300 anyway because of the stupid ass interest rate. Excuse my language, but that's what it's going to be. So even if you said the interest was going to be lowered to even 10%, I still spend more than the dang $250 that I would have spent if I just spent the whole dang thing right then and there. Like, y'all y'all trying to get me. You're trying to get me. You look at a girl who got no debts. I ain't about to go down that hole. I got no credit cards, you guys. I remember when I took the one credit card I had and I cut that B word up. I have no credit cards and I haven't had one in 5 years. Yeah, I was the adult toddler. But in that time, I didn't think about going to get a credit card. Yo, playing games. What are we doing here? Like, I'm going to need you. This is not a good idea. I'm like, when they say that the lowering interest rates is going to save Americans, you're capping. That's what I'm saying. That's what this is. That's what this looks like. And you guys, I'm not like, yo, I got a lot to say about this because, yo, I don't even know why you thought this was a good idea, Mr. President. Like, did you think that we wouldn't know? I feel like there might be some people out here who thought this was a good idea. You got people on the left who think going after the institutions is a good idea. And not just people on the left who think that, but even people on the right think that. I agree wholeheartedly. Go after the institutions wholeheartedly. But artificially lowering the interest rate, yeah, nah, you are doing no differently than the Fed. You know, this is a subjective logic that is telling us why the interest rates are the way that they are and not using an objective reasoning, which would be the algebra, the math. People, your credit scores, your debt to income ratios, all are, found via algebraic equations. You can calculate your own damn credit score. You don't got to risk your data or pay a company to do that, you guys. That's literally an algebraic equation that if you can solve a quadratic equation, you can solve for your own darn credit score. You can solve for your overextension percentages. You can solve for your own debt to income ratios. Heck, you can vibe code your own dang thing to figure it out for you. If you ain't trying to do it, ask one of these AIs, okay, to do it for you. If you ain't trying to do it yourself, I wouldn't, because, you're risking your information, your data. I wouldn't recommend. Side note, I'm just saying, okay? If it ain't an algebraic equation that absolutely anybody can just check themselves, okay, which I believe is information that all these institutions should make available. This is how we got to our interest rate. This right here, okay? This is the algebra plus our fee. This is how we got to 10%, to 15%. Heck, if it is 30%, it's not because you're greedy, which is what everybody thinks right now. It's because these asses are greedy and not because they're actually basing it off of any real objectivity here, which is the algebra. Math is objective here. It don't matter how you like me, don't even matter. Your teacher fails you because you didn't get enough questions correct. The teacher passes you because you got enough questions correct. Okay. When the math ain't mathin', there's a reason to be suspicious of the behaviors. And that's what we feel about these credit card companies, about these lenders and these debt people. Like, that's how we feel. Okay. We need to start asking those questions. Mr. President, this ain't a good idea. I'm not going to support it. I don't support it. If you thought this was going to really address affordability, it doesn't. It's only going to exacerbate the issue, because every time lowered interest rates come into the play, all anybody does is go further and further into debt, because we did not address the real problem here, which is the individual is over leveraged. If we do not implement personal responsibility and discipline and change these financial behaviors, this does nothing. And for those of us who believed that, now you know not to believe it. And you can do the research yourself, okay, you guys? It pretty much says it. You can look at people who consolidate. Those who consolidate are more likely to take on more debt because they feel like they can afford to take on more debt. They freed up some capital via consolidation, and they feel like they can afford to take on another bill, making their debt to income ratios even higher. Now, I know this because I simply read. I do the research. There's nothing that I've said or nothing that I've learned that no one else could take the time to learn and read themselves. Okay? You guys, this is not a good idea. Like, at all. I don't support it. I don't think any of us should support it. I think, Mr. President, this one ain't it. This ain't it. Okay? Okay? The other things I fully support. Okay? You want to, say that a person doesn't have to make 3 times the rent to move in. I support that. You want to say that you want to stop Wall Street from buying up single family homes. I support that. You want to limit access to debt. I'm all for it. This ain't it though. This ain't the one. Now, frankly, if we spent last year focusing on affordability and accountability, particularly to these institutions, as opposed to, a particular agenda in Latin America that I won't go into depth here because that's not the point of this channel, I think we might have had this debate. I would have said what I needed to say last year. We might be talking about something else, because unfortunately, you didn't focus on this. Now we are focusing on this, and it feels kind of bit like a ploy because we're heading into midterms. Yeah, nah, this ain't the one, POTUS. Sorry. This ain't the one for me. And I don't think it should be something that you guys should support either. Again, nothing I've said is something you can't learn yourself. Okay. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the majority of people who get lower interest rates don't go into debt. But the numbers I've seen, the data I've seen suggests the former. Okay. This doesn't help, like, at all. And I don't think that this helps. It's not going to prevent the institutions from getting their money, because they will. Just because they're not getting it from the interest rates don't mean that they're not going to charge you elsewhere. You're going to end up spending the same number, but across fees like transfer fees, late fees, and annual fees. That's what's going to happen there. So even if the interest isn't 20 to 30%, you're still going to end up spending that same number across additional things. So it doesn't strike at the institution. It doesn't do anything about the individual being overextended. It doesn't truly limit access to those who want to go have access to debt, because even if they can't get it from Visa and all these other credit cards, they're just going to go to payday loans. They're going to go borrow from Cousin Pookie and mess up everybody's Easter dinner coming up. That's what's going to happen. That's what it's about to look like. So while they sit here and say lowering interest rates are going to save Americans, you capping. And really, all I'm saying is no cap. That's what I'm saying. Pun intended. Pun intended, you guys. I don't think we should do this. So get in the comment sections. Let me know what you think about this. Do you think that President Trump should go for this? Or do you agree with me in that maybe we shouldn't? Because frankly, I don't think this is a good idea, like, at all. So get in the comments. Let me know what you think. Again, you guys, subscribe to the channel of Pocket Politics, as well as the YouTube channel of Moral Finance. You guys can follow me as well on TikTok under the Moral Finance name as well. Get in the comments. I want to hear what you guys have to say about all of this. And of course, let me know if you guys are looking into having a budget specialist help you deal with your budget so you can get yourselves out of debt sooner rather than later, and really do something about implementing discipline and responsibility in how we do our money. Head over to my TikTok of Moral Finance, get into the DMs, and just ask me. I will help you guys. And I'm even willing to sit down with you guys for like 10 minutes for free, just so we can talk about this. I'll give you everything, my schedule, my rates, just so we can actually start doing what's best. And I'm willing to be reasonable and play around with the rates, just so that way we can do what's best for you guys. I want to be affordable and I want to be helpful. So definitely reach out to me on the TikTok of Moral Finance, get into my DMs, and I will, tell you what my schedule is, what the times are, and what the rates are, so that way we can actually do something about this. So love you guys, and I will talk to you later. Shields up, please. Protect your wallets, because this ain't it. This ain't it at all. I love you. And of course, because it's me, Kepler.